And now to talk about a very relevant topic. And I think most of you here today face this challenge. It is a challenge that is part of the transformation journey from many companies. And to cover that, I would like to call Max Cardoso, a tech consultant from V8, to talk about the modernization of legacy applications. Max, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to see you all here with us today. Thank you, Sensedia, for the invitation and the opportunity to share knowledge with you. And the idea is to talk about the modernization of apps. At V8, we really like to accelerate our customers at all times. My boss is the expert of that. We want to accelerate the process of identifying the solution, the analysis. So, the analogy that we have for modernization will have to do with that, and you will learn more about it. Do you like these cars? I'm sorry. Unfortunately, we are not giving one away, but we're going to talk about modernization of legacy applications, and I would like to present to you a different perspective. That legacy, that old car that you love, that runs well, that takes you everywhere, it meets your expectations, but it's legacy. Perhaps a little bit outdated. Perhaps it's being threatened. No, perhaps it's about to be replaced. Perhaps it's not really up to date in terms of technology. And then we start with those questions. Wouldn't it be better to replace legacy for something newer, more comfortable? But that's not what I'm here to tell you. Perhaps we should ask a different question. Instead of replacing it, perhaps couldn't we optimize it? Perhaps get a new steering wheel, a multimedia dashboard. But at the same time, what are the concerns one must keep in mind when thinking about modernization? Because there are challenges, there are different complexity factors, there are elements that will generate conflict, and it's not going to be easy. When we talk about modernization for different organizations, you're going to get different ideas from different people. Modernization is about replacing, it's about rebuilding. But modernization has to do with moving things from one place to another. If you get all these people in the same room and we ask them, what can we do to make this company more modern? You're going to hear, we're going to replace technology, we're going to change vendors, change clouds, we're going to change something, we're going to buy something else. But if you ask why do we want to modernize this company? Perhaps you are going to hear different reasons as well. Oh, because my area needs more scale. My area needs to become more competitive. Our products are outdated. Are they wrong? No. What we lack here is consensus or at least alignment on the reasons why we need to modernize. So, for our car analogy, we don't need to replace it. We have to think about a reason. For what reason am I going through this process? Can I modernize without replacing, without losing the features from my legacy? And the answer is there. Let's look at the obstacles. We don't have more this type of wheel. How can I replace it? Okay, so there's a problem with continuity in terms of spare parts. Now it's mandatory for cars to have airbags. How can I install an airbag on this vehicle? So I have to analyze what are the products I'm going to find in this journey so I can identify the reason, the why I'm going through this process. So right now, I'm going to run into some problems that we're going to group in different categories. Imagine that in the car, there would be a group called technology, the steering wheel, the carburation system. And then we have comfort, like safety. If I had to divide it in two groups, just like we do for legacies, we have business drivers or the business fit, innovation, and agility. Technology, cost, which is always a constant, complexity, and risk. Complexity is very much connected to time, and time equals money. So one thing has an impact on the other. So when I start looking into this, I have to think, well, my drivers or why I need to modernize makes me analyze all these different areas. But why should I analyze these different elements? Well, they have a direct impact on the pillars of modernization, which are the functionalities of the legacy system, the architecture or how it was built, and the technologies, the resources that I'm using to support my legacy. So, based on that, and again, what should I think about my business so these pillars would support the business? And we always have to think about the business before we replace anything. Let's assess the costs. So, what is the approach since I have to consider this method of analysis? Still don't know. I don't know about your legacy. I don't know when it was built, how it was built, and especially, I do not know how it meets the business needs from your organization. It can be working fine for one area, but not the other. It can be working fine for the supporting the core business of the core area of the business, but not doing so well in experience. It can contain a lot of content and information that cannot be lost, information that will be difficult to migrate. And it cannot be support a cloud migration. So I need to know this to define your approach. And it's not going to be a single answer. You're probably going to find many options for you to take your legacy to a more modern state. This slide might be a little bit confusing if you're not a technical person. I think I've skipped one slide. It's skipping slides. But to explain this slide, how can we address the technique? Well, functionalities. Functionalities address problems, business fit and innovation. So what are the business problems I'm trying to solve when I assess the functionalities of my legacy system or many legacy systems? I can have a couple of dozen them. Functionality gaps, adaptation, difficulty in customization, support, ecosystem. I also need to worry about how this application allows it to better connect with other applications that eventually I will need to build or acquire in my organization. APIs. Stiff systems. Not every legacy system is rigid. Some allow you to open the code and rebuild it, but then we're talking about skills. We're talking about resources that must know about that technology. So eventually you need to open it and learn about it. What is the risk of that? So when we talk about functionalities, I have to worry about how much I can rebuild in order to meet these functionality and how I can work with new demands in terms of functionalities. We do have a problem with the slide. Some slides are missing from the presentation. Perhaps I was able to solve it. It's I was able to figure it out. Thank you. Apologies. Technology, you know how it is. Talking of architecture now. How should I address the business problem in the architecture analysis? Because again, I have to think about agility. Was this architecture planned for me to get the ideal model in 6 years? I have to think about an architecture that will be built gradually to address the business problems, addressing technology problems as well, addressing things I must see as priorities, because again, prioritizing is important. And of course, agility. I need to do that fast. I need to think of an architecture that's not a big bang, just replace everything at once. Remember the legacy system? Remember a car? It's there, it's running fine. I'm not going to park it into a workshop and wait 5 years until it's ideal. I'm going to do that live while the plane is flying. Difficulty in automation or difficulty in deployment. Eventually, you're going to find that in your legacy system, and it's very difficult to come up with a new version. So, perhaps a possible analysis and keep core functionality in the back. So, I have mo- perhaps I can create an intermediate layer that will allow me or give me that flexibility. Cost. When I think of cost, when I think of cost, I have to think not only about the original investment, how much it costs to support this new architecture, but what are the cost factors behind the architecture? Risk. I have to think constantly about risk because technology is never about today. It's going to be tomorrow and later. We always have new security threats. So, by addressing this, I need to be able to think about something scalable that fits my budget, that can be done fast and in an agile way. Last but not least, when I think about technology, I have to think about cost points, complexity, and risk. Obsolete technology. My car no longer I no longer have spare parts for the carburation system. I no longer have spare parts for the, I don't know, engine. I have to think about different technologies that I can replace before that technology is no longer available. So, time is a major risk. Don't wait until the technology is not available. So, how can I have this coexistence between old technology and new technology until I have a new resource to replace it? Because you cannot immediately replace old resources sometimes. Lack of support and updates. Not always you'll be able to find a technology that will count to end of life support. And the vendor will tell you, well, support ends in 1 year. So how can I sync my modernization process with the end of life of that resource or that technology? Last but not least, I have to think, how can I modernize my application inside a specific time frame, considering risk, cost that is compliant with my business goal? So I talked about some items to be considerate, but the next question to be answered is, how can I run that in my organization? Because you're talking about the analysis that I need to do. How can I make that happen inside my organization? I need a method. I need a method that will comply with the deadlines, risk, and complexity levels that I have. According to Gartner, companies are adopting a continuous delivery model in order to implement digitization processes in their organizations. What is continuous modernization? It helps you remove or replace the problems that you have, for example, on your car's engine. So I'm going to replace one spare part, but I'm going to keep driving. I'm going to tweak one thing or the other, but I'm going to keep driving it. And little by little, I assess the options that I have to keep this car running. Your organization is not going to park for you to run or for you to do a modernization. Your organization is going to continue to working every day. So I need to continuously improve the resource, identify friction points and hurdles every day. And we need to do this every day because tomorrow a new technology is going to be launched. And every day your legacy will get older, the threat will get bigger. So every day you're going to have less opportunity. So I have to think continuously. I need to establish a culture of modernization. So I need to have a focus team on that. They're not focusing on supporting, they're focusing on thinking about the things that need to be done, why they need to be done, and where they're heading.
So we might think of a structure with the correct investment. So do you have already a team for, platform product? What about your modernization team? You have to think about that. You have to think about the budget. And especially, how are you going to motivate that team? Am I going to establish goals? For example, the team can be focused on the user experience or availability. And on top of your legacy, you have a team running to work to support your journey. So we have talked about a method to assess, a method to identify the problems. There's also a method to continue to improve and modernize. And there's a way of doing that with a team. What's missing? We have to think about the ecosystem. So, according to Gartner, in a comparison between 2022 and 23, executives are investing more in application modernization. So, your ecosystem is running and your application can get older sooner than you think because your environment modernized. So you'll not be able to talk with that protocol because that's going to cease to exist. There are things that drive modernization in companies. It might be internal or external forces. External forces are normally connected to the amount of touch points that you have with your customers. The behavior of your customer changes, and obviously they're going to seek, seek for better experiences. And they can change, apartments, cars, insurance plans. So all of that is going to accelerate the need to modernize. Regarding internal forces, for example, you are a manufacturer and all your machines are modernizing. So you're not able to do telematics because your machines are old. These are internal forces. What is going to make you mitigate the risks in a continuous modernization process? Well, if you're going to replace any parts, it's not going to be fast because it's not easy. There's a cultural impact. People who knew how to operate machines are going to take some time to adjust to the new items. Cost, risk. Oh, it's going to be cheaper to get that solution. It might be cheaper, but it's probably going to be more expensive to replace it. And uncertainty. Are you going to find a solution that will meet the demand of your company in the following 2 or 3 years? Are you able to predict that? No, of course not. So you have to be prepared for change. When you think about your architecture, you have already to think about that as well. And what are the challenges that CIOs are going to face? Well, the first challenge is your daily life, because you're not worried about innovation on a daily basis. You have to deliver what you have to do. And there's also, budget problems, scalability, and an efficient scalability. Sometimes companies move to the cloud thinking about scalability, but it's not easy to scale. You have to have a cost predictability, or else it's going to go wrong. You have to have tools to measure it. Technical debt. When you first assess it, you will find several issues that are connected to technical debt, from database to applications. So you will have to think about modernizing your applications, your database, your infrastructure. So there are several layers involved in the legacy and not only the code. Risks of safety and security, like I said, and also talent retention. So when you think about replacing people, those people are going to continue because those people have knowledge, they have history, they have background, and they're going to participate and be engaged and trained for the modernization. But it's not easy. You are leaders of your companies and you are focusing on your products, on your deliveries, and you think about who can help. And those that can help are those who have done it already. Because, it's not recommended really to do it by yourself because you're going to get things wrong and things right. And that takes time. And time equals costs. And costs are part of the risks of the project. At V8, we work with a model called Application Modernization Program. And this program has 4 stages of analysis. The first one is called discovery. So we do an assessment of the hurdles so that you can understand, so that you have an overview of your technology from the technology side to the business side. After that, we have an overview and then we can do a planning. So remember my question. What is going to be my approach? On this stage, you start to have insights and you have to understand what are the applications that we have. Is it hybrid? Is it in SaaS? Are we executing to meet, third-party demand? So with that, we already have that view. And then we can start transformation because we've already mapped some things. And some of the things are only, decisions. You do not really develop anything or do anything. You just make a decision. And the decision might be to let go of an application because that application only meets, 3% of my goals and I can deal with that until I'm able to modernize the other side. So these are the decisions. That's when we start on stage 4. And on stage 4, we start with the operations. That's when we go to production and then we start to put operations in the modernization journey. How long does it take? Well, the assessment, about a few weeks. The rest of it will depend on the landscape and on answering the question, why do you want to modernize? Because your focus will define the project. Your focus might be your customers or your business area. It might be scalability or maybe a need of acquisition because you're going to integrate 4 or 5 companies and you're not able to integrate those companies. And all of that will lead you to think about the architecture, the functionalities, and the technology. So this is done on the first stage, and from there on, we follow with the modernization program. So how do we do that? I won't have time to explain the whole methodology, and so I invite you to find me during the coffee break so we can talk a little bit deeper about it. So finally, our proposal is to think about modernizing your applications in a continuous way. Think about the hurdles and the difficulties that you have, and think about answering the why you want to modernize. And do not let go of your legacy because it will still be very useful. Thank you so much. Excellent, Max. Thank you so much. Max, I think we have a couple of minutes for a few questions. Max, so the first question is the modernization journey different according to the verticals? For example, if it's an insurance or company or a bank, is there a different way or a different journey for each one of them? Yes and no. No, there's not really a way. There's a reason that you're going to choose. So if your reason is connected to the goals of the organization, that's the path to prioritize. So for example, you're going to focus on the ability to scale, or you're going to focus on improving the user experience, or I can prioritize a better ability of intra-system integration. And that has to be linked to how I'm doing today, because I can have a 2-year-old or a 20-year-old application. So I have to have that overview, and that overview is going to show the best way to go. You cannot define it, you have to analyze it first. Excellent, Max. Second question: how do we use data to define that journey? How are we able to create a journey, a modernization journey that is more data driven? Excellent question. Well, the first answer to that question is, in your modernization journey, you have to modernize your data structure, because you will create some solutions in parallel that will live or interact with your legacy and with the new data created during the journey. So during the modernization journey, you will also find other opportunities and paths, but you have to think, it's part of the journey actually, to think about the modernization of your data architecture. So you have to think about data lake, for example, and use everything that you already have regarding information. You have to replicate that information and get some insights. Maybe with that you will be able to understand why you need to modernize. So data help to understand why. Right. And so our last question is very interesting, actually. Does the application have to go to the cloud before joining that modernization journey? And I would add, moving to the cloud means being more modern. No and no. No, you don't have to move to the cloud, and it does not mean to moving to the cloud does not mean to be modern. Someone talked about it this morning. If you go to the cloud, you're actually renting someone else's machine. So no, you don't have to do that. Modernizing does not mean only technology. It means culture. It means thinking about, doing it in a hybrid way. It means you can improve your technology environment. And I talk environment so that we do not talk about application. And then afterwards, you can think about moving to the cloud. And that might even be better, because you're able to, you know, streamline the process so that you can move it to the cloud in a safer way. Excellent, Max. It was great. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon.